Hey guys, so in this lesson, we're going to begin by looking or reviewing what our learning target is. A learning target is basically what a teacher wants you to know. So many times we do something in school and we don't know why we're doing it or what we're supposed to be doing exactly. So learning target is kind of the teacher's the answer to what the teacher wants you to do. So like if you went to a movie with your family and you sat down and you got some popcorn and you sat there, watched the movie, and afterwards you were talking to a friend and the friend was like, hey, how did it go? What was the best part? And you said, well, I got to wear new socks. Is that why you went to the movies with your family? No. So you don't want to focus on something small like new socks at the movie theater. If you were going to the movie theater, you were going to enjoy the movie and eat some popcorn. Today, in our lesson, I don't want you to focus just on listening to the story or just on writing. I want you to focus on this. So look at our learning target here. What I want you to do by the end of this lesson is I can answer questions using key details about the problem in Out of the Rubble from Off to Class. Off to Class is the book that we've been reading, and Out of the Rubble is the story that we will read. So listen closely, and in the activity, you will need to maybe reread certain parts so you can answer what you need to write about by telling us what's in the story, not just what you think. So let's get started with that. If I can turn this off. So we're going to read this passage Out of the Rubble in order to be able to answer questions using key details. Whenever we do a close read, we first stop and look at the pictures. Pictures don't always tell us all the answers, but it gives us a good idea of what's going on. And if you don't know some of the words, maybe the pictures will help you figure that out. For example, where is this story happening? Up in the corner, we can see a map. This is, because I've read it before, is Haiti. And so it's like in this general area. Below us and in an island. Now, Out of the Rubble, we see some kids at school. Now, this is an interesting type of school here because my brain has practiced a lot of reading. It says tent schools. Doesn't look like our school. She's smiling, that's a good thing. But look at all this down here. If we don't know what rubble is, sometimes we stop and we look at what maybe it could mean on this. What do you think rubble could mean? Stop and think about that. What picture could this be rubble? No, those are girls, right? We know what this is. This is school. Rubble and school are not synonyms, aren't words that mean the same thing. Here's more school. Here's more school. Smiling is not something you can get out of. Maybe this down here is rubble. It's something that is destroyed. So let's see what these children have to get out of the rubble from. Now, the font is kind of hard to read. I will include a picture so you can click on it if you want to on your own time, but listen to the introduction. Remember our hamburger paragraph, the top bun and the bottom bun? Well, this is the top bun. What if you woke up one morning and found that the world around you was completely different? That your house, your neighborhood, your family, and your friends were all gone. We had some things change for us. Our house, some of our houses and neighborhoods were gone and destroyed, but your family and your friends? That's what thousands of kids in Haiti faced on January 12, 2010, when a powerful earthquake took their world and turned it upside down. The severe earthquake, do you know what an earthquake is? An earthquake is when the earth has like these plates on it and they're kind of floating, and sometimes it collides, it crashes, and so it makes the whole earth shake. It's really scary. The severe earthquake collapsed buildings as if they were made of cards. Streets disappeared under rubble. By the end of the day, more than 200,000 people had died. Life on the island slammed to a halt. So a halt is just stopped. I mean, could you imagine all those people dying? Terrible. So that is the introduction. This is going to talk about the destruction of Haiti during an earthquake. Now we can look, remember your hamburger has the top bun, and then we have the meat, the cheese, and the condiments. We'll look at it here. Here's the meat. This section is going to tell us about the meat, the cheese, and the condiments. So let's look at the next part. Some sense of normal, which that's kind of what we want, right? It's been kind of crazy here. We don't have normal. If it was normal, we'd all be in school right now, and you and I would be looking at each other in a classroom. But it's not normal. We're not the only people who haven't had normal. Let's see what happened to these kids in Haiti. About half of the schools in and around the capital city, Port-au-Prince, were damaged or destroyed in the earthquake. Going to school, seeing friends, and having a routine is really important for kids after a disaster. It makes life feel closer to normal for a few hours a day. But how do you get kids back to school when the world around them is in chaos? When you can't even think about rebuilding until tons of debris, tons of all this stuff down at the bottom, have been cleared. You set up a temporary school and you do it as fast as possible. We did that. Sorry, Cosmos Exploring. We did that with first doing our school just on our phones on Class Dojo. And now we're still doing it because we're doing it virtually. So we're kind of like them, but they're a very, very poor country. So they couldn't do things all electronically, but they set up some schools. So the goal was to have normal, because their problem was they couldn't have normal. And why couldn't they have normal? Because there was a huge earthquake that killed a ton of people and destroyed a lot of things. So let's go on to the next one. How did they set up the temporary schools? With tent schools. Kind of crazy. In the days after the earthquake, groups like UNICEF, Save the Children, and Plan International, these are 3 different companies, basically, that go and help people in disasters. So those 3 different companies help schools that were damaged or destroyed set up tents so their students had somewhere to go for classes. They also set up tent schools near camps for people who had lost their homes. They didn't have hotels to go to like we did. They didn't have friends to stay with. They had to live in tents. So they sent up tent schools for people living in tents. When it rained, the tent schools flooded and the children had to go home. But on good days, the schools were full. Could you imagine? So you could start having school and then all of a sudden it would start raining and then you're like, oh, never mind, go home. And you just have to sit in your tent all day. So again, there's a couple problems. The biggest problem is that there was an earthquake that destroyed their school. And now they're trying to come up with solutions, ways to fix it. Let's look at how another way they fixed it. School in a box. This thing over here, it's a little bit different. You see it has a different color. There's some pictures. We call that a sidebar. It kind of gives us more information. It's usually pretty interesting. School in a box. Ever thought of a school being in a box? UNICEF also delivered hundreds of school in a box kits. Each kit contains everything a teacher needs to set up a classroom. There is even a can of special paint that can be used to turn the box lid into a blackboard. Each kit has enough supplies for 40 students to get back to school, at least temporarily. UNICEF sends the kits all over the world to help kids get back to school after disasters like tsunamis. That's like a really, 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 really bad hurricane storm thing with huge waves. And earthquakes. They also send kits to places where wars keep kids from getting to school. Did you know that? There's some places where they still fight, like in the movies, and kids can't go to school because they literally will get killed. So UNICEF makes it so they can have school right where they're at. Kind of cool. So they're coming up with solutions. They're having the tent school. They send school in a box. Let's see the final part of this passage. A little laughter. Do you see how some sense of normal, tent school, a little laughter, it kind of gives you an idea what this section is about. So let's read this. Knowing that the kids were dealing with a lot of strong emotions, teachers wanted to make sure the tent schools were a fun and safe place. Besides having standard classes like reading, math, and French, they speak French, not English there. They played games and sang songs. Teachers also encouraged students to talk about their feelings so they could start healing. So when there's a disaster, sometimes you need to have a little bit of laughter. Not only the routine of doing schoolwork, but also having fun and talking about things maybe you don't really want to talk about. So this is how this school in Haiti made it out of the rubble. Stop and think about what the problem was and how they wanted to fix the problem. And then after that, you're going to go back and see if you can use details, different things from this text that will help you understand or help you prove what it's about. We'll talk about it more in the next part of our lesson. Okay, guys, so the activity for today is writing. Remember last week how we talked about the hamburger paragraph where there was the topic sentence, the introduction, and then the three things in the middle, the meat, the condiments like tomatoes and lettuce, and then the cheese, and then the bottom part. That's what we're going to work on in using key details to write about the school we just read, Out of the Rubble. So for this first topic sentence, I want you to share with your readers what this paragraph is going to be about. Kind of easy peasy. What are we going to be talking about? Are we going to be talking about you? Are we going to be talking about my crazy dogs who are trying to play? They'll think they're part of the video. Or are we talking about school? No, we're specifically talking about out of the rubble. So come up with a sentence that tells me what you're going to be writing about. Don't think too hard, just put it out there and write it for me. Okay, you wrote your topic sentence. You gave us the top part of your paragraph that tells us what this paragraph is going to be about. Now I want you to write your next sentence. The meat part is to tell me, what is the problem in this story, in this passage? What happened on this passage, in this passage, that was a problem? Don't tell me how they fixed it. If you choose to write about tent schools or school in a box, it's not correct. But what happened that made their life not normal? Just one sentence to tell me what happened to this school. Write it down for me.